Well, Ashford strikes again. Hey guys, it's Alex with Hammond Watch. I'm here today with the Hamilton Broadway Automatic. It's the H43515875. And it's an extremely attractive dress watch. I picked it up from Ashford.com. I'm not affiliated or sponsored by them, but if you've ever seen any of my other Hamilton videos, you'll know I'm a really big fan of their website. They post some of the best Hamilton deals on the internet, although their pricing tends to move around and watches sell out and get restocked pretty frequently. So I find myself having to check back kind of more and more to find these great pickups. But I wanted to share this one with you guys today. I don't see this watch getting a ton of play on the internet, and I'm not entirely sure why. I think it's beautiful and wanted to share it with you today. We'll start off with the sizing. The width of the case at the bezel is 42 millimeters. It is pronounced outside of the case though. So the actual case itself underneath is actually 40.5 millimeters, and it certainly wears that way. It just has kind of that visual footprint of a larger dress watch. You're looking at 50 millimeters lug tip to lug tip. And if you bring the strap in and measure that effective lug to lug kind of at that spring bar, you're looking at much closer to 48 millimeters. So not incredibly oversized, but certainly a more modern sizing to this dress watch. You have a great thickness at 11.1 millimeters and a really nice 7 millimeter crown. The Hamilton logo with kind of that frosting behind it looks phenomenal on the watch. While the crown is just push-pull, you do get a screw-down case back. That said, it really doesn't do much for you in the way of water resistance. You're looking at just 50 meters. I know it's a deal breaker for a lot of people, but this is a true dress watch, so I think it's very fitting for the overall design. There's a very nice standard 22 millimeter lug width. You know, given the width of the watch, I like having a more substantial strap to really keep it in place. The padding also assists in doing that, and the watch wears it extremely well. The leather itself is a burgundy calfskin. It feels nice enough. You know, it doesn't feel luxurious to the touch or anything, but I think aesthetically it really plays well together, especially with the blue accent that they used for the adjustment holes as reinforcement. I think it really ties the whole piece together well. On the other side, you're looking at the deployment strap, or deployment clasp rather. Nice etching of Hamilton, and I love this step design. They did polishing on the sides and a vertical brush everywhere else, and even polished this little tiny first step. I think it's a wonderful detail, and these clasps are a pleasure to operate. 2-button, and then when you open it up, everything is nice and kind of milled out as it should be. Very easy to operate and adjust on the fly, and to me, a highlight of this watch. Another detail I absolutely love on this watch is the top of the lugs. While they are just vertically brushed, you'll see there's a little ridge, and it starts at the center of the lug near the top and drifts to this innermost edge. It's very reminiscent of Omega's twisted lugs, but obviously a much more subdued and subtle version of that, and I think it's a really nice mix-up and added detail to this watch, which it does have really nice details kind of scattered throughout it. The finishing is polished on the bezel against that brushing, which looks phenomenal, but underneath that bezel you have like a darker spacer. You'll notice that it'll have 3 lines, a larger gap, and then 3 lines. That same pattern follows through on the etching on the crown. You'll have 3 serrations for grip, a little space, and then 3 more. Really just keeping everything, I think, as cohesive as possible. As I mentioned earlier, mixed finishes on the crown with the frosted backdrop and the polished vintage logo for Hamilton. And then while you have just a horizontal brushing across the side of the case, it is surrounded by a polished edge. It not only runs the top and side of the watch, but it circles around the bottom, where it's not entirely necessary, but at the same time it provides just a little bit more light play and it makes it feel like they really went in and tried to take care of the details with this watch. Those really nice details also find their way onto the movement itself. You'll notice on multiple surfaces you see a nice perlage finish. I'm not really used to seeing very much in the way of movement decoration at these lower price points, so it's certainly a welcomed addition. The movement itself is Hamilton's H30. It's based on the ETA 2836. So it's a hacking and hand-winding day-date movement. This one features an 80-hour power reserve for convenience, which I think is really nice, and then a nice decorated rotor. While I realize this dial may not be for everybody, I find it incredibly attractive. The maroon backdrop is broken up by this blue sunburst stripe running up the center of the watch. That's accented on the sides by these engraved grooves, providing almost like a pinstriping on the right and left side of the dial. The indices are all applied, all sword-shaped, minus the numeral at 12 o'clock. And they all have an engraved stripe running through the center of them that is brushed. And it just helps to, again, add another mix of finishes and just a little bit more light play and interest. I also appreciate that they did an applied vintage Hamilton logo above the printing. And then you have a really nice framing to the day and date at 6 o'clock where there's even a nice step down. I think it all works together extremely well. If I could do away with one thing, it would probably be having that automatic printed below Hamilton. But they do provide that on the quartz models. Just something you're going to have to deal with here. The handset is very simple but properly sized. You'll see the hour hand actually kind of grazes almost the tip of the index. And then the minutes hand runs all the way out to the polished strip that separates the inner dial from that outer minutes or seconds track. The only thing I'm kind of unsure about is the seconds hand. I think it looks phenomenal. I'm very happy that it's touching every line around the outermost edge. But that pop of red almost seems a little bit out of place. I understand it for legibility's sake, but with all of the details of this watch creating a bunch of light play and kind of a whole dynamic feel, it almost feels just a touch out of place. Being a true dress watch, Lume really isn't an important aspect. That said, they did give you a sufficient amount on the hands, including on the tip of that seconds hand. It's going to provide for a couple hours of low light visibility, but it's not going to last through the evening. That said, with this type of watch, I find that extremely forgivable. So here we are on my 7.5 to 7 3/4 inch wrist. And I must say, the watch does have a pretty big visual footprint. Like, it feels pretty sizable for a dress watch, but it fits extremely well. The effective lug-to-lug at 48 and having the bottom side of the case a lot closer to 40 millimeters means it almost wears and feels like it's a bit of a kind of a size down, like almost that Seiko effect. Tons of light play, which is why I'm so appreciative that Hamilton did decide to use some anti-reflective coating on the bottom of that sapphire crystal. The thinness of the watch means it really disappears on wrist, and when you pair that with a kind of a thick padded 22 millimeter wide strap, everything is just extremely stable, and I couldn't be any happier with how it feels. Alright, so let's talk pricing and availability for a second. The retail cost of this watch is $995 USD. I don't think that I'd be a buyer at that cost. I do appreciate all of the details that went into it. I understand how that cost could be justified. But at the end of the day, I mean, $1,000 for a three-handed 50-meter water-resistant Hamilton, it's just a little bit steep. You start competing with Longines at that price point, and that's where I think things get a little bit tricky. When I looked around, the department store kind of pricing and Amazon was in the low to mid 600 range. But if you're patient and keep checking in on the gray market sites, you'll be able to pick one of these up for a killer deal. Joma Shop, I think, was selling these around the $350, $390 mark. They are sold out at the moment, but my biggest suggestion would be going to Ashford and just checking in frequently. This watch I've seen sold out and restocked on there probably half a dozen times. Whenever you go to Ashford, there's always a discount code at the top of the website, or if you peruse for long enough, you'll get a pop-up offering the watch at an even steeper discount if you pick it up within, I think, like an hour of that offer being posted. So when I bought this watch, I was able to get it from Ashford brand new for $325. After tax and shipping, it was $347. I think for sub $350, getting a Swiss watch with this many details is a phenomenal deal, and I'm extremely happy with the purchase. One thing I do want to note, when you order from Ashford, a lot of times you're not getting the full box. You're getting almost like that service pouch, you know, the small zipper container. So if you're big on getting the full box and papers, it might not be for you. But if you're open to going gray market and the packaging doesn't necessarily matter as much, I couldn't recommend this enough, and couldn't recommend checking out Ashford frequently. You know, if not this watch, they always have some of the khaki fields at incredible prices as well. So I hope you guys have enjoyed the video. If you have, please don't forget to give us a thumbs up. Also consider subscribing. I took a little bit of a break there dealing with some medical issues, but I'm back and should be putting out a video weekly at a minimum, and hope to see you in the next one.